I was stranded on a desert island with cannibals, and I had to run a session of D&D. And that D&D session determined whether or not I was eaten. I would only need this one thing, and that's my DM prep binder.
Hello humanoids, welcome to Halfling Hobbies. I'm Halfling Hannah, and one of the first videos that I did that did really well was a sneak peek at my DM binder. And a lot of you watched that video, which thank you so much, by the way, for that. But that was almost a year ago and pretty early in my DM binder phase. And as you can see, things have gotten out of hand, to be honest. I have learned a lot, I have created a lot of resources, and I've kind of revamped my whole system, so I thought it was time to show you my new and improved ultimate DM binder system. I have a binder just for prep, and then I have a binder just for my sessions. And I'm going to show you everything that I have in it, all the things that I've made, everything that I include. If you really like this binder, you can pretty much get everything that's in it on my Patreon. Just look for Halfling Hobbies. And, well, let's get into it. Here we go. Alrighty guys, before we start and really dive into these binders, I have some really exciting news, and that is that we have a sponsor, the very first sponsor on this channel, and I could not be more excited about it. And we're going to get more into that later on. For right now, make sure that you leave a comment down below answering this DM question. The question for today is, if you could give one organizational tip to a new DM, what would it be? Go ahead and make a DM's life easier by commenting down below. Before we get started, I want to give you a couple disclaimers here. All the pages, individual pages and side quests and things, NPCs that you see in these binders, I created myself, and you can own if you become a patron or simply purchase them. Either one's really great, honestly, and would be fantastic. So I have those links down in the description below. There's lots of cards and lots of stuff that I bought in here. You can find links to those also in the description below, or you can pick them up at your local hobby store, which I highly suggest that you support. Now, let's get into the fun stuff. First of all, this is actually 2 binders now. That's right, I've graduated from having 1 DM binder to having 2. One binder is strictly for prep and extra materials, which is this big boy right here. It's a 2-inch black binder, and here's what I have in it. First of all, I have lots of maps. I still run physical sessions at the table, so I still need maps. So here I have a variety of maps. I got this whole pack for $24, and I just keep them in these sleeves so that when I know that I'm going to need one of these, or on the fly I need one, I can just open it up and take it. So I have lots and lots of maps in here, including some pre-written module maps, such as Sword Coast and Barovia, because I am running Curse of Strahd. Next, we have some of these condition cards, which I really love having on hand for brand new players, because sometimes they just need some help remembering what each one of these conditions does, and I can just hand them the card instead of reminding them every time. Next, I have a whole bunch of traps. I really enjoy this deck of cards because honestly, I'm not very good at traps, and they're pretty mundane, and I repeat them a lot when I come up with traps on my own. These cards give me lots and lots of trap options, so I'll pick some of my favorites and take one of these sleeves and put it in my session binder. After that, we have all the magic items. I just got the giant pack of magic item cards, and I put them all in here front and back so that you can just kind of flip through them, and when you find something that you like, you can take it out, and on the back of the card you can see what it does. I love these because I can literally just hand these to my players during the session, and they can keep them in their binder, and they have your magic items right there at their hands. They're fantastic, and I love them very much. So there's lots and lots of those magic cards. Next, I have a deck of critical fails. So if the player fails critically, these are some fun and interesting things that could happen on a critical fail. And I have critical hits. So these are interesting and different things that can happen on critical hits as well. Again, I pull out some random ones, maybe some of my favorites, keep those in my session binder, but all the extra ones I keep in my prep binder here. And then last, but certainly not least, is every monster. I have talked about this before, that I have a problem about buying anything that has monsters in it. And that includes the cards. So I have Volo's Guide, Mordekainen's, I have the regular monster manual. I have all the monsters in here. And what I like to do is I like to just sit down with this binder and I like to flip through and look at the different monsters and what they do, and kind of helps me kind of plan out my session and what I want to do. So this is my prep binder. I look through this, I take the things out that I want, and then I put it in my session binder, which is really honestly what you're all here for. So let's bring it in. Awkward transition! Here is my session binder. This is the one that I keep with me at the table when I'm having a session. I'll keep my prep binder nearby, but it's not on the table. So first I have a planner so that I can map out, all those complicated web structures that are my players' social lives, so we can finally come to a mathematical agreement on which day we can play D&D, which turns out to be once every other month most of the time. I'm just kidding. That's not how often, but it does feel like it sometimes. So a good planner to keep in your binder specifically for D&D is an absolute must. So I have that in there. Next, I have this really cool little pencil bag that might remind you millennials of middle school in your Trapper Keeper. There's a word you probably haven't heard in a while. Do you remember Trapper Keepers? I sure do. Yeah. So what's in this guy is I've got pencils, I've got highlighters, I've got my dry erase markers, some dice, and I keep my players' miniatures in here separate from the rest of them so that I always have them, because I lose them a lot. So when I'm actually using this, I will take this out and set it off to the side, because it does make this whole thing kind of bulky. Next, I have my plot planner. This hasn't changed, except now you can see all my stuff in it. Because I'm actually not using this binder at the time, this is my homebrew binder. Right now, I'm currently creating a brand new binder for Curse of Strahd, because that is what I'm running. So keep an eye out for that video in the future. I'm making a whole binder just for Curse of Strahd that, of course, will be available to my patrons. So I've got my plot planner with the acts. So I like to think of things in acts and scenes, because I'm an English person and that's just the way that we think. So an act is this big picture part that is happening in the story. This is really from levels 1 to 4 or 1 to 3. And then I break that down into individual scenes that are kind of like cut scenes in a video game, where something important happens that I definitely want my players to know. This helps me to pace and break up my overall campaign and how I want things to unfold. You'll notice that Act 2 never got filled out because, well, that session didn't last that long, which is very sad. But I also don't like to fill things out too far in advance, because your players should affect your story and should affect what your villain does. And if you plan everything out ahead of time, then that's simply not the case. And I want my world to be a lot more flexible than that. So I don't necessarily fill all these out ahead of time, but I have them so that when I'm prepping that session, I can go through and I can think about those different things and what I need to prepare for that session. Next up in our first tab, that is red for panic. These are my panic lists right at the front. If my players are going to a town and they want to go shopping, I've got a whole list of real quick little panic things: street vendors, shops, people to meet, events that might happen, just if I'm not feeling super creative at the time. Then I have NPC panic list of names, because that's just you got to. If you're looking at this and you're not a DM yet and you're wondering, what do I need? Names. All you need is so many names. Trauma. Okay. So we have that. And then I have this cool little weather sheet.
Again, I made all this stuff, and you can find it on Patreon if you really like it. But I made some different weather guides, so different climates, what the weather is like and what is happening at the time, because I feel like that's something that we don't include very much. I feel like weather is really underused in D&D, mostly because we DMs forget about it, and it becomes complicated to remember and track and everything else. So I made a nice little chart that I can just look at and roll a D100 and see, what the temperature is like in each climate in each season. I did a lot of research on that, on climates, so yeah, there's that hour of my life I won't get back. Next up, we have critical fails. Like I said, these come from my prep binder. I picked my favorite ones, and I have critical fails and critical hits, just 1 page of each. As I use these, I will take the card out and put it off to the side to remember to put it back in my prep binder and put a new one in here, so that at any given time, I can have a random effect that happens. Moink. Next, I have a little tabbed folder that has some fun things in it. So first of all are these teeny tiny little clothespins. Paper clips would do the same thing, but I'm weird and thought that these were adorable, so I got these instead. What I use these for is I use these to clip monster cards to my DM screen or handouts to my DM screen. Anything that I kind of want to put up and off the table, that's what I'll use those for. Sometimes I use them to flag different things, quests and whatnot that my players are doing if I'm feeling especially whimsical at the time. That's what I'll use that for. Also in here, I have tabs, so I can add tabs to things as I add more and more things to the binder. And I have these little flags. I call them flags. They're just little post-it note things. But this way I can flag different things. So if my players have started a mission, it's in green. If they finished it, it's in blue. If they've made a merchant angry, that's pink or yellow, depending on how I feel. So I keep all that stuff in there so that I have it for the next section, which is going to be creation and events. So we have our town and city creation guide. That's 2 pages to just think through all the things there. We have a magic shop inventory, creating that, and a tavern creation guide. All of these are for if I create something on the fly and I want to make sure and write everything down and keep it for later. Then we get on to one of my favorite things, which is my side quest section of this binder. I really enjoy side quests. Honestly, most of the time, the entire campaign is just side quests, and then I find some excuse to tie it all together. Because I love creating side quests, I love running them, my players seem to enjoy going through them, so I just really like side quests. When my players go to a job board, I've actually created these job board postings that I tape on each one of these folders. So my players can kind of peruse through and look at the different postings, or I'll pull them out and hand them to them, which ones are actually available and which ones aren't. Then if they choose to engage with one of those side quests, I can literally pull this entire folder out of this binder and I have everything that I need to run this side quest. I have my quest page, which goes over each one of the main events. It has optional endings because, like I said, I believe everything should be flexible. It has important NPCs, items, hints, and DCs. I even will print, I'm a big fan of paper minis. They're one of my favorite things. I'll print out paper minis that I need for the side quest, and I'll put them in little Ziploc bags to keep them all together, and I will keep them in these folders. So if they choose to do that, I have all of those ready to go that I can just stick in there. Also, along with these side quests, I have, in this case, the Merchant's Guild is super important to this side quest, so I have all of that flushed out. I have maps. And if I create a monster or if I tweak a monster, I have those homebrew stat blocks on there, which in this case, they're a little beefier goblins than you might expect. So I have stat blocks for those. And I have this for each one of these. In this case, I know that I'm going to use this monster. So I have this monster card in this folder. In this case, I needed to create a chaos veil, so I have different distortions. This one has lots of different parts to it, so I created those different parts. And I just store all of that in the folder, and I know that I can take it out if I need it. Also, if I know that I'm going to need a specific map, I will take my map from my DM prep binder and I will stick it beside the side quest that I know I might need it for, or in the folder if I don't want to put it out here like this. And the same with monster cards. I'll either put them in here or I'll put them in the folder itself. So I have a whole bunch of these that I have created. And the beautiful part about this is not only can they be awesome side quests, they also can be complete one-shot adventures. So if at any point someone comes to me and says, hey, can we run a one-shot adventure? I go, absolutely. Can you want to do it right now? Because I can do it right now. I have like 5 of them. Take your pick. That may or may not have happened before. And people either are impressed or think that you're really weird and don't have a life. Yeah, so there's that. This one I haven't quite finished yet. I'm excited about it. It's called The Cat's Quest. Murder, He Purred. Anybody remember those books? Those are good books. Anyway, so if I'm not quite finished with one, I'll put it in here so I can get started on this one and make a folder for it, but it's not quite finished yet, so it's just stuck in there. Next tab. We have events. These are non-combat events that might happen in different locations for different reasons. The first ones have to do with animals and familiars. So I found myself a lot being asked, are there any animals around I can talk to? And me going, I did not think of that. So I created a whole chart. Because that's what I do. I created a whole chart that is speak with animal events. One of my favorites on here is the first one, which is as you walk, you see a large brown bear sitting in the road. He's not aggressive and he waves to you as you approach. This is what I would actually read to my players. Then the next part gives a little bit of dialogue to get you started and then the overall of what is happening. So the brown bear would say, hello there. Do you have a moment to talk about our Lord Ficus Featherbottom? Turns out a charlatan druid has started a cult of animals, recruiting them to bring him food, trinkets, and gold. If the players refuse to give an offering, then Ficus's band of rogue squirrels will visit the players in the night to exact an offering from them. I have several more like that on here. They're just really whimsical and fun and useful if you have a druid in your party. Next is my familiar chart. When my wizard summons a familiar, depending on which type that they are, fae, fiend, or celestial, I will roll on this to give them a personality trait and also a flaw. It's just a really fun little thing that I've found that makes familiars tolerable. So you should totally try it if you hate familiars. Makes them a little bit better. Next, I have traveling roadside events that could happen. Then forest events, mountain, urban is the last one. So these are all the different events. Again, they're set up to roll a d6 to make them random. As I use them, I simply cross them off and then I'll use something else. And then as I run out of these, I make more. On Patreon, I make more every single month and put them out for you. So next tab is tavern names. Here's where we're getting into some really fun role play stuff, which I love to include in here. So this first section is going to be taverns and merchants. So tavern names. I just created a chart where if you use the first word and the second word, you create a tavern name, such as the Adorable Tramp. Who wouldn't want to go to that tavern? Or the Bloody Stein. Okay, maybe not that tavern. The Confused Skunk. All of these are excellent tavern names, or the Friendly Farmer. It's another one. So you can just grab one word and then the other word. And I've done a lot of combinations on here. I really like all the combinations that I've had. Hopefully you do too. Then we have tavern and inn events. So if your players are at a tavern or an inn, you can roll this random thing to see what happens there. All of those specifically happen in those. And then I've talked about this before. One of my favorite things, unique tavern specials. I believe that every tavern or inn should have a special, something that they're known for, even if it's not particularly great. And so I made charts for that. So perhaps my favorite section of this binder is my NPC sheets. In this case, specifically merchants and tavern keeps. But before we get into that, I want to share with you our sponsor. I am incredibly excited, and this sponsor is the reason I have not slept in about 3 days,
because these books are just too good to put down. This is the Black Pages series, and it's all about the main character, Elena Black, who can make herself fictional and go into books. And what book nerd has not dreamed of being able to do that? These books are incredibly well written and absolutely suck you in. Pun not intended? So there are currently 3 books in this series, and a 4th is coming out, which is what I want to tell you about. The 4th book in this series launches on August 17th, and you can pre-order it right now for 99 cents. I am not kidding. That is an incredible deal. But what makes it even better is that the author is donating 100% of pre-order profits to 826 LA, which, if you haven't heard about, is a wonderful charity that helps at-risk kids by running D&D sessions and helping them after school. It is a fantastic charity. As an English teacher, I'm telling you that there is nothing more valuable to a child's education than enrichment programs like that happen outside of school. 100% of the pre-orders for book 4 are going to charity, and Danny is even going to match whatever it is it sells. So I would absolutely love it if we could raise a whole bunch of money for 826 LA here on this channel. So my Halfling community, make me proud. Make sure that you hit that link down in the description below. That will take you over to pre-order his brand new book. And if you want to be especially kind, the very best thing that you can do for an author is leave a review. Simply say, I am so excited for this book. Hashtag Halfling Hobbies. All right, now let's get into my favorite part of the DM binder. This next section is chunky because it is my ebook, NPCs for RPG, specifically merchants and tavern keeps. Here you are going to find merchants and their shops. You notice on here I flagged these because each one of these comes with a quest, and your players can ignore that if they want to, but if you want to give them a side quest that involves these, you most certainly can. And so I have the character description, quirks and flaws, backstory, and quest, as well as items that this character would be carrying, because sadly you have to be prepared for their inevitable death. The next page is their shop, and of course I left a nice space for you to take notes if you want to add anything to their shop. So I have all sorts of merchants and their shops. Jewelry, knives, this guy does creepy weapons, you've got a forge, so you have all these different things. And then in the same ebook, you also have tavern keeps. So here's the exact same setup, except these are tavern keeps and these are their taverns. Past that, I have random NPCs. This was my very first ebook ever, also available down in the description below, both of those are. And you have these really just random NPCs that could be anywhere. They've got a little backstory and a little quest for them, but you can kind of place them in anywhere. So I have also a lot. I have a lot of NPCs. You could have a lot of NPCs too if you join Patreon. Past this is my handout section. So anytime I make one-shots like this Lonely Little Dottie one-shot, and anytime that I make handouts like letters or riddles, I will print those and put them in here so that I can take them out and give them to my players whenever I need to. After that, we get into the more random, sometimes needed area of the binder, which is I have the Treacherous Traps cards. I have some random maps, such as tavern maps, which is what I use this for, or mansion maps. And then I have things to enhance my maps. These are peel and stick clings. So you just peel it off and it clings onto your battle map, and then you can take it back off, put it back on here. So I like to put these back to back so I can see all of them and flip through them real quick to grab them. Next, I have my magic items that I want to give my players or I want to include in my campaign that I can just grab at random if I want to. And then I have some random monsters that may or may not make an appearance in my game at some point. I don't have a plan for them, but they're the appropriate level, the appropriate types for the areas that my players are going to be in, so I keep them there. And then finally, the back pocket is for any miscellaneous things that I create for my game. And that, my friends, is my DM binder. So that has been my DM binder. I have shoved so many things in here. I've had to upgrade and increase the size so many times, but I am absolutely in love with what I have. If you really like this binder setup, remember that you can get it too over on Patreon. And if I'm missing something in my binder, please make sure to leave it down in the comments below. I'm always looking for new things to add. And until next time, my friends, may your game have advantage. Halfling Hannah here, signing out. And speaking of Patreon, look at all these incredible patrons. They're the reason that I'm here today, and I do what I do. Aren't they beautiful? Aren't they wonderful? You could be on this list too. Just join us over on Patreon. Okay, bye, y'all.